Welcome back to the Giveaway Gladiator build. And if you're paying attention to these boxes I've got up here, you know what we've got going on next. And that's a suspension by EVO Manufacturing. Now that we got this kit all unboxed and laid out, you can see it's a very comprehensive kit. This is the EVO Manufacturing 4.5-inch Enforcer Overland Series Stage 4, and it's got everything you need to lift your Gladiator. It's got front and rear coils, front and rear upper and lower heavy-duty control arms, front and rear track bars, front control arm drop brackets, more on these later. It's got all the hardware you need, extended sway bar links, it's even got extended brake lines. EVO Manufacturing has been building high-performance Jeep parts for 12 years now. Based out of Fullerton, California, they're right down in the heart of that Southern California rock crawl scene, and their products from mild to wild are tested on trails mild to wild to make sure that they get you a quality part. Now we could talk about these parts quite a bit more, or we could just go install them in the Gladiator, and I say let's do that. So if you've seen our builds before, you know the first thing we do is take static measurements, and that's just to give us a good baseline. So we're going to measure from the bottom of the wheel up to a known point on the fender, and just take that static measurement. We write down those measurements at all four corners, and that gives us a baseline. Then we can do the same afterwards. We'll know exactly what we got for lift. All right, we've got the Gladiator in the air. Wheels and tires are off. Now it's time to pull all the OE suspension bits out. The springs, the shocks, sway bar links. We won't break into the braking system yet. We're just gonna pull the caliper and hang it off to the side for now. All right, we've got the rear suspension all apart. Now we're going to start replacing the arms, the OE arms, with the EVO Manufacturing arms. The first thing, just as you hold them, the difference in weight is huge. This is the EVO arm, feels like it's another couple pounds heavier. You'd have to put them on a scale to see exactly. The EVO joint, or the EVO arms, also use genuine Rock Jock Johnny joints on both ends. Gives you that extra bit of flex when you're out off-road. Now if we had a low height and we were just replacing the arms, we'd probably match the factory length eye to eye, or maybe just a hair longer. Being that we're doing a 4.5-inch lift on this Gladiator, we want to make sure that it's going to help adjust for all the geometry changes, get the pinion up. So we're going to start out at 16 and 15/16, give or take a twist, see where we end up at. So we got both arms the exact same length. We're going to stick them in. You will have to manipulate the pinion up or down just a little bit to get the longer arms now to fit in the mounts. And now we're on to the rear lower control arms, and we just take our measurement. EVO says go ahead and start them out at 23 3/4. Now we definitely do not want to lock them down because it's just a starting point. We may have to adjust after we got it sitting down on the ground to see where our pinion angle comes out at. One trick to make sure that both your arms, left and right, are the same size is to use the bolts, factory bolts, to go through the bores and line them up. If you're a half turn or full turn out, they won't line up very good. All right, now we're on to the rear coil springs. And here I've got the factory coil spring versus the new EVO manufacturing coil spring. And you can see there's a big difference between the two. The EVO manufacturing coil spring is quite a bit taller and it is slightly larger in diameter. That's going to give us that extra capacity needed to lift the vehicle 4.5 inches. Now, one thing we need to note is that there is a left and right hand side to these coil springs. Right on the side of the coil spring is a part number. This is the EVO 600-167, and this is going to go on the right hand side. The 166 is going to go on the left hand side. Now that's standing at the back of the vehicle looking forward. Don't forget your top coil isolator. Now we're ready to put in the rear track bar bracket. And that slides in right over the factory track bar bracket. And we're moving the track bar mounting hole from down here up higher. Because as we lift the vehicle, we're actually lifting the chassis above the axle. And that's going to change some of the geometry. The track bar's job is to keep the axle centered underneath the chassis. And so we want to lift this track bar back up closer to the factory geometry so that the vehicle handles good. It's held in place by a U-bolt around the axle tube. We're going to go with a bolt right through the factory hole, and then we need to drill a hole here and add one more bolt. Now, one thing, as we're bolting in the suspension, we're going to use a little Loctite, blue Loctite, make sure everything stays locked down. All right, we've held off as long as we could, and now it's time to break into the brake system and put in these EVO manufacturing extended brake lines. Now, keep in mind that if we get into the banjo bolt here at the caliper and the fitting up here at the hard to soft line junction, we will be allowing fluid to drain out and air to get in. So make sure when you're all done, top off your master cylinder and bleed the brakes. Now it's time for shocks, and of course we're going to do something really cool. Fox. Oh yeah. Talked about geometry with control arms, with the rear track bar. We also have to worry about it with the drive shafts. The Gladiator drive shaft in the rear is really long, and it's a split with this center bearing here. Now the Gladiators are kind of got a reputation for having some drive shaft vibration issues with the taller lifts. Being a 4.5 inch lift, we want to use all 3 spacers that EVO manufacturing includes in the kit. They also include longer bolts, so make sure get a little Loctite on those bolts and put these spacers in. Now with the rear suspension pretty much done, we got to go do the same thing for the front end. So we're going to get up there, peel out all the factory suspension pieces, and start installing that EVO manufacturing lift. Just like the rear, we're going to be replacing those wimpy stock control arms up front. But we're going to pull them off on one side first so we can install the EVO manufacturing control arm drop bracket. And that's going to mount right here, right where the factory control arms mount. And what it's going to do is, as we lift that vehicle, those control arms angle, the angle of the control arms is going to get steeper. By putting in the drop bracket, we're going to drop the control arm mounting point from up here down lower, which will help get those angles closer back to stock and make the vehicle handle better, especially with the lift this tall. We got sleeves to go inside. Run our bolts through. Of course, don't forget your blue Loctite. To be careful of is this exhaust loop. They seem to be all over the place from the factory. This one's a little wide and it's just barely contacting this control arm drop bracket. And if we were to leave it there, we could get one of those mystery vibrations. As that engine's running, it's sitting there shaking and it's just barely rubbing up against this bracket, which would drive you crazy inside the car trying to figure out where's that noise coming from. So we're gonna pull this bracket back down, just grind out the top edge of that bracket a little bit, give us some more clearance around this loop. All right, next up are the front coils, and they are side specific. This is the 600165, and it goes on the passenger side, or the right-hand side. Get it in place and then twist it in. Make sure the pigtail is resting up against the corner of this spring seat. Now the pro tip here is to take your bump stop extension and zip tie it to the inside of the coil so it's up and out of the way as you're trying to get the coil in place. And then you can set it right down into place and install it. Next thing is the EVO extended brake lines. These are much longer, designed for that 4.5-inch lift. And we will be braking into the brake system, so you will have brake fluid leaking. Make sure you have a way to contain that. With the suspension in, now it's time for shocks. Now some of you eagle-eye viewers out there might have noticed that when we were first installing these arms that we were installing them upside down. The stickers were upside down. And what we were doing is we were playing around trying to figure out a way to make it so that we could get to the Zerk fittings easy to grease them. What we did find out is that we turned the main bodies right side up and replaced the Zerk up on the top with a 90-degree Zerk fitting. Now you can easily get in on it with a grease gun. On the adjustable joint end, we turn the adjustable joint upside down so the grease Zerk is facing down and back, and we're replacing it with these low profile Zerks. That'll keep it up and out of the way from off-road debris. If we do find we can still hit this little zero clearance Zerk, maybe we'll turn that back up and around and do some trimming on the brackets. Just coming up with some different things to make greasing easier. All right, with the lift pretty much done, it's time for track bars. Now, EVO Manufacturing does give us a starting measurement. They're saying for the front track bar, 34 9/16 eye to eye. That's a good start. And for the rear, 33 9/16. Now, we're just gonna set it up in here and hook it to the frame end. Let the axle end just rest up on top of the mount until we get it down on the ground on all 4 tires and we can do our final adjustment. Okay, so we took our measurements again, and I just put it in a middle box saying after static because we don't have our true lift height yet. Right now we're on the 37-inch range on the left-hand side and the 38-inch range on the right-hand side. Now this is without driving it at all. Once we drive it down the road, these springs are going to settle down in, and yes, we will actually lose a couple inches. Then we'll be able to take our measurements again, put them in the very last box, and that should be our final measurements. So there you have it. The EVO Manufacturing 4.5-inch Enforcer Overland Lift Kit Stage 4 on the Giveaway Gladiator. Now of course this is a build series, so this is just the lift kit part of it. There's many more videos to come as we build this Giveaway Gladiator to give it away to somebody. So have you entered to win yet? Check the description box down below to where you can find more information out on the Giveaway Gladiator. There you'll also find more information on EVO Manufacturing and the lift kits they offer. Let's get an EVO Manufacturing lift kit under your Jeep. While you're down there, hit that like button, leave us a comment. What do you think about this build series? What are you excited to see go on this truck? And it is a build series, so make sure you hit that subscribe button and the notification button that'll remind you each time we drop a new video on this build series. So until next time, thanks Northridge Nation. hey, let's get to it. And I say that all the time, so that's silly for me to just say. And don't forget you hit your head.